Previously, on Dinner Machine, convinced a defector seeks his death by poison, the king demands immediate testing of all foods destined for his plate. Many are trialed, but by way of dietary preferences and fruitless ontological questioning, no suitable human subject can be determined. Opting instead to appoint an animal as royal taster, a party of knights is sent in pursuit of such a creature. More than just a physically challenging quest, their loyalty is tested by realizations of the castle's true scale, discoveries of ominous abnormalities in nature inconsistent with depictions in their zoologist's guiding tome, and their existential encounter with an enormous and ancient fatberg. We last saw our heroes facing an uncertain fate as an omnivorous creature larger and more monstrous than any previously known to exist in this world charges towards them at violent speed. The king, still in his bunker, meanwhile, is half dead and adrift inside his mind. His hunger has rudely animated, slipped its moorings and begun to gain autonomy. Within his body, it sprouts slimy limbs, sinew cages, and shrapnel teeth from its foul, curling mouth to make wet openings in royal organs. Gradually, every corporeal faculty is slurped away by the phantom hunger's dappled, stinking tongue, drained of function and feeling. His royal senses slowly dim. Systems clog, groan, eventually fail. His inner world growing more and more saturate, vibrant, and worthwhile than what he could interpret of the outer. Indeed, ignorant of the accelerating reality of the world beyond his armored walls, the conspiracy can take whatever glimmering form he desires. In the ceiling, in the floor, they've shrunk themselves down to infinitesimal size. We cannot trust even the bricks this bunker is built from. You hear me? I scratch them, yet they feel not like stone. They are light, hollow. They are 100 beggars' tongues that cannot be severed, and I hear their licking call within me as I awake. Beyond the symbolic delivery of dinner by dumbwaiter, all communication to and from the rest of the castle ceases. These dishes, of course, go uneaten. During the first few moons of the knight's departure, he survived on regurgitated meals hefted directly into his mouth by his dearest fool, the only one he still felt he could trust, head tilted back like a baby bird's, glitched crown askew, mouth wet with saliva, parted meekly in a quivering O. Then, when the acidity of the stew became too severe for his already wilting pipes and stomach, on raw rats they would catch in elaborate traps. From an early age, the fool had been deeply taken by the beauty of the mechanical and mathematical, wandering away of Sunday services to watch the guards at trebuchet practice, the nauseous wheelmen running like rats to bend back the throwing arm, the loading of projectiles and their following arcs, the way one could form in their mind the path such an object might take through the air and whose lives it may crush upon its x-axis conclusion. The arcs also of the resulting debris and what reactions they might bring to life. The peculiar geometric rigidity that hence absorbed the fool's slate-side doodles earned him swift exclusion from mainstream schooling, saw him forbidden from speaking to those his age and exiled to the gestorium. These strange sketches in shape and technique appearing dangerous and demonic, informed as they were by a visionary access of a world too complex to be digested by prophet or beholder alike. Though rarely given time to mature beyond the clairvoyant placement of custard pie for dramatic tension and perfect splatting, only now is this gift growing into an expertise, consuming the bunker and their daily routines in dense clockwork mechanisms. Once the trap has been laboriously reset from the previous catch, they squat together in a marked observation area at the base of the western wall, holding hands and whispering, attentive for the first snuffling signs of movement that usher in the evening's entertainment. The uneaten royal dinners are placed as bait in the center of the room upon a primitive X, scratched with fingernails into the stones, that marks the center of an invisible circle directly below a dangling wicker cage. Tonight's chicken liver pottage steams in the candlelight, the fatty oils risen to its social surface, trembling. The cage swaying above in no wind but its own anxious tension. "Ooh, here he comes, Nunk, ardent as ever, yet the rodent never clever." The fool's hand tenderly brushing dandruff from the king's shoulder, squeezing out what vacant reaction it may. Unsuspecting rats as this are led by the nose to the gourmet plate along alluring serpentine lines of smell. Upon the clumsy crossing of a barely visible threshold about the dish, they trip a horsehair wire, knotted and wound between 5 equidistant points about the dinner so as to cover every angle of approach. "Oh, most cunning king, most dastardly trap, wherever he step, the line'll sever and snap." Once triggered, the tripwire sends, by vibration, a signal along a sequence of pulleys, winches, cranks, and shafts to the top corner of the northern wall, the final shaft in the chain raising, only by a fraction, one side of a length of horizontal board, enough to make the lead shot balanced upon it begin to roll in the direction of the tilt, prompting the atonal ringing of an array of chimes and bells, which, though mute of musical merit, drama, and unchanging in melody between days, brings both the king and fool to squirming fits of giggles. "Ooh, ring, 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 food for the king. Ooh, see those hollow eyes in panic. No clue o' consequences, impact mechanic." At the end of the slope, the shot, having gained momentum, collides with a tin chamber stick, its base greased with something like lard so as to allow it, upon collision, to slide along a high shelf, enough that it comes to rest below a thread. "Cover your ears, Nunk, here comes the crash. Will the little devil dash? Will we see him flee? Or does his munching yield naive glee?" The candle's flame, working quickly upon the fibers, eventually burns through the thread, freeing with a sudden snap a suspended bucket of sand that descends fiercely upon the unstable corner of a 3-legged table, the fool applauding. "Woo! Ahoy! Gluttony prevails! As ever our friend greedy, from eager whisker to curious tail." Uprighted by the impact in a complex act of 3-dimensional choreography, the table careens into a freestanding suit of armor, positioned precariously next to another, which in turn is facing another, and so on, that the suits in sonorous cascade create a chain of collapse, ending in a weighty metal force upon the eastern wall. Loosed by the tremors, then a string of poorly hung paintings falling to the floor sets into motion a halberd, pinned to the wall through its pole, knocking it free from its supporting pegs upon their plummet. "See how it pigs, sire, plump little morsel, a fine little fat rat fit for a royal." Swinging thus, the halberd similarly frees further weapons, each arc-end bump sending blades about their pivots in dips in such a proximity that it repeatedly appears they may collide with one another, yet engineered in such a way that they never do. At this point, as always, the king and fool gasp, exchange disbelieving glances, and paw at their heads in vain attempts to make outward these agonizing inner moments of suspense. "Oh, it heard me getting skittish. Stay there." At zenith, the final blade in sequence slices through a string that sends a signal along hooks, cogs, wheels, weights, and pulleys, ultimately loosing the tie around the king's own royal scepter, suspended in a web where the corner meets the south. The scepter's orb emits an eerie glow, the cobwebs and rafters flooded intermittently in future green. Relating in physical terms to other, less noble objects humbles the scepter, dulls its ancient power, for no rare magics may unwind the ties of gravity of time's tumble, and in a stuffy dungeon with no ventilation, all fall to the floor at the same fatal speed, dent just the same on impact. "Good little rat, nice little rat, stay there just 1 second." The scepter comes quickly down a curved wooden chute, piercing as it ejects from the end a sheet of unscrubbed calfskin vellum. That's right, good. Stay right there. The tearing hide sinks an opposite counterweight, which in turn raises a bucket of water. Stirred by the motion and compelled in part by a nearby wagon of dried kelp, or rather by their empty stomachs, the bucket's captive goldfish leap from their soup along predetermined paths, splashing the surrounding stones, as well as, to their delight, the king and the fool, who have knowingly labelled the area they sit in childlike cursive, the plash zone. Droplets of water from the spray somehow loose the grip of an array of chains snaked about the floor beneath the bucket that gradually slip across one another in resonant clockwork tings, bringing the cage down upon the rat in jolts and spurts. At every stuttering stop and start and every nervous twitch from their subject, every sequence of chatting, ratty neurons made visible in that moment before the decision, the king and fool lean closer and closer in, eyes and mouths perfect O's. The rat turns to face them and screeches, "Oh, oh, oh," as the cage hits the ground. It screeches still as the king crawls over, yanks it through the bars, and sinks his teeth into its throat. Once finished, he wipes the debris from his mouth with a crusty corner of robe. Squatted and sitting upon his heels, swaying steadily as he gazes blankly into the brickwork and picks hair from his teeth, he waits for the rat to pass through his passages, wincing as it makes its way round tight turns and roughly rubs round dry pipes, the long O that weaves through his core from royal mouth through royal asshole, a passage around which he may manifest in mirror of that which passes through him. Unmoving from his avian squat, he later lets it loose, the warm mound of fur and fibre slowly spreading out from beneath him, later rolling across the floor. At night, he lies on the bearskin rug, weeping breathlessly into the fool's checkered lap. Snot deposits cluster in his matted beard, tangle crimson about the lips, offal stippled, sour, bloody. Never sure how to proceed, but bade ever still to try, the ass-ear sleeves of the fool's cap and bells softly trill as he bends to plant a kiss upon his master's reddened cheek, purring, "Nuncle, me lord, it pains me so to see thy sadness presently poured. The future's records will surely have stored that this castle was ruled by a king more adored than any other leader in all we've explored, that any foul traitors the nation abhorred, and addressed in accord any thoughts untoward, you're caught with the sharp end of a sword. Nuncle, your rule is surely resonant through time as a most triumphant major chord, along with which thy people always roared, that these moments were ignored." But he is always inconsolable and falls asleep queasy, panting, and sodden. His stomach stays awake with the fool, working on the catch, learning, softly sprouting hairs and whiskers, toes, teeth, and nails felt faintly in dreams as alien urges, as his container body begins to function anew. Thank you.